I've got a quick question for you all. If I could get a show of hands, please. Who here has ever had to answer the question when applying for a job of what are your salary expectations? Me too. That's pretty much everybody. Now, what if I told you that when hiring software engineers, which we've all had the pleasure of having to try and do, there is something known as the expectation gap. When men and women first come into the realm of software engineering, so at graduate level, women's expectations are ever so slightly higher than men's. That crosses over very quickly. In the first year, they cross over, and they never come back. And on average, a man's expectation in software engineering, his salary expectation is going to grow by around 14,500 per year, his expectation. A woman's is going to grow by about 9,500 every year. So over the course of that first 8 years in professional world, you've got a 15% gap. So not only is it a really horrible question to have to answer, as we all know because we've done it, it's also creating a problem. But I recently surveyed talent acquisition folks on this very question. How many of you, I asked, ask for salary expectations as part of your hiring process at the beginning? And 100% of them said, yes, we do. And when I asked them, do you agree with this philosophy for your company? 100% of them said, yes, we do. Knowing the fact that there is an expectation gap, what do we think if we flipped that and instead we applied salary levels, salary ranges to each and every level? Yeah, I know it's a bit of hard work, but that is the work of talent acquisition, right? Bear in mind, that's my background. But what if we applied ranges to all of the levels and we had it clearly defined in a skills level matrix? What if we used, God forbid, the interview process, an assessment and evaluation process to figure out where people are on that range? And instead of asking them for their salary expectations, we told them what our range was. And then we told them what our EVP was. We told them that our interview process and evaluation process would decide where they sit on our range. What if we did that? What do you think that might do to the pay gap? That's just one thing. My name's Emma Jones. I've been working in technology since 1999, so quite a long time. I've been working in talent acquisition, talent strategy, people and culture, diversity and inclusion for close to 30 years. My last 10 years have been in diversity and inclusion in the Australian technology landscape. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is, yes, well, that's me. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, this lovely picture of this interesting person is based on, it's not quite followed around, but let's pretend it's Opposites Day. We're going to talk about what we're thinking about now when we think of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The elephant in the room, when you see that acronym, is what the narrative is that's coming out of the US at the moment. But if we were to flip diversity, equity, and inclusion and say, okay, what's the opposite of diversity? It's uniformity. What's the opposite of equity? It's inequity. And what's the opposite of inclusion? It's exclusion. These are all things we don't want. So as with the tariffs, this is what's happening to the US, who are taking diversity, equity, and inclusion out of their practices or trying to. Now, for my personal feeling on this, and I get asked about this a lot, the acronym is probably going to go. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm certainly not wedded to it. The work is not going to go. And today we're going to talk a bit about why it cannot go. So, women make up 28% of the technology workforce. There's a reason for that. In fact, there's a lot of reasons for that, which is pretty much what you can see here. The environments that we're working in here are subcultures. So if you think about women's experience of work anywhere in your organizations, it won't be the same as the experience of women working in the technology teams. It's a subculture. It's a subculture based on a rich history of technology. If anybody's seen the film Hidden Figures, yeah, that you get the gist, right? It's a subculture. Before the 1960s, it was all women doing coding, because it was seen as very much as like a secretarial job, a clerical job, a support job. And men were doing the very manly and masculine thing of building hardware. And then in the mid-60s, it all changed. And women were teaching men to code these new electronic computers. And then it flipped, and we got this very strange kind of turnaround of this new vocation, because it was back in a time when women had to give up work when they got married, and they had to start looking after their husbands and raising children, and not go to the office, and not have careers. It's not like that anymore. But we're still stuck with this stereotype of what a programmer looks like, that nerdy guy that sort of was born out of the mid-60s, and then the gaming industry in the early 80s and so forth. But what women are having to deal with here is this subculture. It's very much this bro culture. They don't have role models, they're excluded, they're isolated, there's an under mentorship environment, there's pay gaps, presenteeism and so forth. So this is what we're dealing with. And what we know is that when women are not feeling supported, they leave. If they don't get the care and support that everybody else gets, if they're in an environment of inequity, they leave. And this is borne out by the numbers. So over 50% of women leave technology mid-career. And most of them actually don't start until they're between 25 and 30 years old. But what the data is telling us is that more than 50% will leave by the time they've reached 35, and they're not leaving to have children. Unfortunately, the systems that we have in place are outdated. We have processes that are outdated. We still have a system where care is largely given to women, allocated to women. In most of our companies here, there'll be a few exceptions, we'll give women the large majority of paid parental leave. Men might get 2 weeks, 4 weeks, similarly. So what happens is we build inequity into our systems. That was a small bird just flew in. So then we start to look at technology as a sector. It's the fastest growing occupation that we have in any industry, 4 times faster than any sector. And what you can see here is we have a goal of 1.3 million jobs by 2030. So that's 1.3 million skills in the market for Australia by 2030. It is a big, big goal. Now, what unfortunately is happening is that we're not anywhere near that. And this goal has been set by the government and the Tech Council of Australia. And unfortunately, we're not going to meet it unless we can figure out our skills shortage, unless we can get ahead of our skills shortage. I suspect that most people here will have had some experience of that skills shortage. It's not an easy one to find people for. So let's talk a little bit about the economic impact. And this is where it gets interesting. This is why this is everybody's problem. And this is why this is a rebel's call to action. Because it is everybody's burning platform. Most founder-led organizations will not recognize this as a problem that they have to take accountability or responsibility for. We will hear, it's not my burning platform. Why do we have to do this now? It's not a priority. But the reality is that it's Australia's burning platform. So we currently see that technology is the third largest contributor to GDP in Australia, with 167 billion. That could be 244 billion. That's the prediction, if we can fix our skill gap by 2030. And there's a lot of work to do to get to that point. So, this isn't just a talent acquisition problem. There's a mid-career drop-off. Many, many women, as you'll all see, enter careers in technology, but they leave mid-career. There's a lack of career progression, less leadership opportunities, workplace cultures that are exclusive of them, bias, everyday sexism. They're undervalued. And why does it matter? It matters because these are some of the highest growing jobs, as we've just seen. They are some of the highest paid jobs, and they are some of the most flexible jobs. So women are missing out on these economic opportunities as well. And Australia, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is that Australia risks falling behind in global tech competitiveness because they're not able to tap into a full talent market. So, how do we fix it? Everybody all right? How do we fix it? How do we take good intention and bring it to action? This is the million-dollar question. And I've talked here about codifying it. The key is systematizing the work. So systemic change happens when frameworks are in place. We know that because we've seen it happen. So voluntary initiatives, well-meaning, but they're not really going to drive systemic change at scale. What we need is structure, accountability, clear benchmarks, and that is where standards come in. When we set standards, progress will follow. When we put in place frameworks, progress will follow. So what standards do is they take best practice and they turn it into actionable, clear, actionable steps. We have seen this work before. So things like B Corp, things like ESG improvement plans. We've seen it work. So codifying the work to fix it is the best way that we can see as a country to approach this at scale. So not individually, but at scale. So let's take a look at B Corp. As an example, B Corp has 7,000 organizations enrolled in its program. And if you've ever seen it, it's big, it's unwieldy, it takes a long time to work on it. The framework is enormous. But what it's doing is it's changing entire industries. And it's work that is critical to the world. 90 different countries are using B Corp. What it does for those organizations, and this is where they recognize that the hard work is worth it, is they see an uptick in financial performance, in investor confidence. They see real business benefit to it. Another great example, which you'll probably be pretty familiar with, is fair trade. We all see the fair trade sign, and what we know about this is that fair trade actually provides enormous benefit to people, to real people around the world. It's literally transformed industries. It improves the conditions for workers worldwide. Fair work, fair pay for fair work, environmental sustainability. These are things we know and recognize, but it's a framework. This stuff doesn't happen without frameworks. We need standards. And this is where these standards come in. So last year, I launched a system to address this problem in technology called the TEDI standards, or TEDI. TEDI sounds cuter, I think. The TEDI standards is Technology, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, a set of national standards for organisations around Australia to get behind. They're internationally aligned. But this is a system for change. It provides a structured approach for employers to tackle gender equity in a very meaningful way. And it's based across all of these aspects because TA, talent acquisition, recruitment, is not the sole driver of this change. It gets blamed for it most of the time. I've seen that. I've been in talent acquisition myself for years and frequently beaten for not hiring enough diverse candidates. But one of the biggest problems that we've seen is the drop-off. It's what happens to them when they're in the business. If more than 50% of these women who come into technology are leaving, that's not a talent acquisition issue. Yes, it's an important part of the process, but what's happening further along in the employee journey is a massive issue. So we're looking through these standards at career progression, leadership opportunities and pathways, cultural transformation, accountability, and that's a big one. This is another thing that standards drive, is accountability. If you go onto the TEDI Standards website, you will find this ROI calculator that was built by a very clever guy, not me, very clever guy who's a data scientist, and he lectures in statistics and he knows his stuff. And he's been working with a group of labour economists to understand the actual drivers that sit behind this work in terms of what the benefits are to organisations that do this work. And what you'll find is a very real view of what it costs. So if you're a small company, if you're 50 people, it's going to cost you more than you're going to get back. But within 2 years, you're going to start to see some returns, and that's just going to keep on growing. There is a methodology that's attached to that, so please do go and have a look at it. So when companies move beyond good intentions into action, and they commit to a structured approach, the benefits they start to see are around retention, innovation, and revenue growth. These are all well documented, well studied through empirical data that shows us the benefits. And I kind of think we all know that. It's not that we don't know. It's not that the data's not there. And we love data, especially if we work in technology. We love data. But translating that into actual actions is hard. It seems complex. And in people and culture teams, we're pretty lean. It's not easy to build these programs. And then you get changes of people coming through, and you get, turnover and different leadership and changing priorities, which means that it's hard to stick to. The programs that we start, the good intentions we have, are not easy to stick to. But having standards creates a system where change is continuous, progress is continuous. And that's what we need to get to. So I want you to imagine for a minute a world, let's think about this world where suddenly we have an equitable tech sector, equitable. You think about all your companies where you might have 50-50 in your organization. Brilliant. HR, marketing will bring that number up here. And down here will be the dysfunctional child, the dysfunctional member of the family, the Harry Potter that has to live under the stairs when the relatives visit. That's tech. No one wants to look at tech. They just go, look, we've got 80-something% engagement scores. Go us. We're 50-50. Go us. We're brilliant. Look at us. Aren't we brilliant? Women in your technology teams will not be feeling that same sense of joy, unfortunately. And no one wants to show that. But imagine a world where suddenly we've got equitable technology teams, where it's the norm to see women as much as men, and as many leaders that are women as men. And we know we're far from that, unfortunately. But imagine where they're from newbies right the way up to the C-suite. Just as many men as women. And it's just normal. So it's not a dream. I just want to really get that across. This is not a dream. This is a reality, and this is within our grasp. We can do this. We can see this world. We just have to put the right structures in place. So the economic impact, coming back to the numbers again. If Australia's tech sector reaches its full potential, it could contribute 244 billion, big difference, to the GDP. We could be in a position to become a regional tech hub in APAC. And beyond that, we could move from very, very low down in the OECD countries for innovation in technology to being a top 10, which is what the country wants and is striving for. And you will hear ministers talking about this. Ed Husick talks about this all the time. R&D, innovation, research and development. We're so far behind other countries. This is down to us. We have the power, we have the tools, we have to employ them. So, let's think also about the S in ESG, the social, because this stuff's important too. The numbers are important, but think about the world that we're building. Think about what the world's going to look like in 10, 20, 50 years' time. It's going to be different. I certainly hope that what we're going to see is girls choosing STEM at the same number as boys. That we're not just talking to our boys about technology in our homes. At the moment, we're more likely to talk to boys about technology 8 times more likely than we are to talk to our girls. That's going to change, if we want it to. It's a big deal. There's a lot of work to do. But this is the world that we could see. More inclusive products, more inclusive workspaces, girls feeling empowered by technology, girls choosing STEM subjects over boys, and a fairer world. A world where equity is the norm and not an exception. And that's why this is a rebel's call to action. This is about bucking the status quo. And when you come to talk about this in your roundtables, I really want you to think about how you can do things differently. Whether or not you can challenge the organizational structures that you work in to address something that is such an enormous game changer for Australia. We all have the power to do that. Now, I have got a book here. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. It's called Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed. Anyone heard of this? Fantastic book. It's called The Power of Thinking Differently. And I thought this is perfect for today. So I'm going to ask a question, and I would like to see how many of you know this. But whoever gets this right is going to get this book. So first of all, if you think that the gender if you think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a growing priority across the world right now, in 2025, put your hand up. Those people who put their hand up, stand up, please. You were right. So the people who don't think it's a growing one, you're wrong. According to the World Economic Forum, 2025, it's growing. Now, if you think that the percentage of companies who are prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion is lower than 80%, sit down. Okay. You're wrong. Oh, you're wrong. So we now only have a few people left standing up. It's 83% of companies in the world are prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in 2025. Okay, last question. And I would like you to take a guess, all of you, because you might not know the answer to this, or without looking at Google, obviously. Of those companies that are prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, what percentage do you think are, let's do it this way. What is the type of diversity that is the highest priority? You can just shout it out. Who said? Anyone else? Okay, you said neurodiversity. Sit down. What did you say? You said gender. What type? What discipline? What specific? You can sit down. So of gender, the people standing were correct. Women. Okay, of those, what percentage do you think of the companies that are prioritizing women? Incorrect, but anyway. I'd love that, but yeah. No, you don't have to sit down. We're going to get the nearest person to the correct number. Give us your guesses. Best guess. You reckon 90? 73. Well done. But please just think about that. I want you to all think about the fact that 73% of companies, well done, enjoy the book, 73% of companies around the world globally are prioritizing women. Why? Why is that? You know why? Because women are not a minority group. Women make up 51% of the working population. In cybersecurity, it's only 17% of the workforce. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing occupations we have. Imagine it, I think we're 35,000 skills short in Australia today for cyber. Imagine if we could free that up. Imagine if we could access that talent pool that we're not accessing at the moment. So 28% of the whole tech workforce are women, that's it. Just imagine if we could tap into that pool of women that are not participating in technology. And we all have a role to play in that. That is my challenge to you today, is to look at the standards, have a look at them. They're on the website. Go have a look at them. Think, are we meeting these? This is best practice. This is leading practice. And there's also foundational practice. But have a look and see where you think your companies are. Are we doing this stuff? Are we not prioritizing it? Are we not figuring out what our burning platform is in 5 years? What sort of an organization are we building? And are we taking some responsibility for the future of our workforce? Thank you. That's it from me.
Superb. Thank you so much, Emma. Might have time for one quick question, if anyone has a burning question.
That's a great question, and it's actually documented. There's an organization called NCWIT, which has done studies on this. So your question is, what's making them leave? So what's making them leave is the inhospitable environment. There's no question about it. It's the culture of technology that drives women out. So there's a lot of things that play into that. It's harder for them to get hired in the first place, so you'll hear this confidence gap. It's because women are kind of told almost that, I could be here for some time, by the way. Women get told that they don't look like a technologist. They're not technical enough. They don't have, what they're expected to see. They're held to higher standards than men are. We assume that men can do these things, and men also assume they can do these things. But women will question themselves because they're doubted. So that's an entry barrier. When they're in the job, they don't have relatable role models. They don't have mentors. They don't have people that are relatable to them. They don't have informal sponsors that men do because men are the dominant archetype in that space. So that also makes them leave. And you'll hear, if you start listening into the women in tech communities, you'll hear this stuff. It's commonplace for them to talk about these issues that they're facing. And quite a few of them who decide, okay, this is too hard. This is way too hard to, I just want to get on in my job. I want to get that promotion that I've been trying for. But because I've been on parental leave twice to have 2 children between the ages of 30 and 38 or whatever, that's held me back because I need a track record of continuous performance. Things like that. So the system is against them. These are systemic barriers, and these are real experiences of the women working in those careers. When they come back from parental leave, because we still give women this, primary carers leave, instead of everybody having the same leave, which would completely solve that problem. But when they come back, on average, it takes a software engineer 6 years to get back to the level they were at financially to when they left. That's an average. So there are a lot of reasons, but if I had to put it in a nutshell, I'd say it's an inhospitable working environment. And it was a great question, because it's a good one, a good meaty one. Yeah.
Okay, one final question.
Yeah, that's true, right? So that does happen a lot. So if you think about, imagine Google. Let's just take Google as an example, okay? So let's say Google says, okay, we're going to build a new product, and we need a great team because we're Google and it's world class. This is really important. It's going to cost us a lot of money. So we need a great team. Okay, who are we going to get to lead this team? I've got 2 people here. I've got this woman who's, 35, whatever she is. And we've got this guy. And they're the same, both called Alex, same background, same skill set. Now, what if she goes off on parental leave? Google does not backfill. If an engineer goes off on parental leave, they don't backfill them. So that's a massive risk to the project. Suddenly, one candidate has a much higher risk profile than the other one. Even if it's not been verbalized, there is a risk profile. And that's the same for the person leading it to the people who they, all the people that they build that team with. And most companies will have that invisible struggle when they're looking to hire. Imagine startups, bootstrapped, or you've got seed funding, or you've got your Series A or whatever. What do they look like? They go out and land grab for talent right at the beginning, and they go, sorry, I'm going to be here for a while. They go and land grab for talent at the beginning, and they go, I'm going to get a software engineer because Dave knows a really good one, John, who did some work on this other thing. Okay, so we'll get Dave in. Dave knows another guy he went to uni with, so we're going to bring him in. Suddenly, you've got a team of 10 engineers and literally no women. And then all of a sudden, you get your first woman and it's an admin. And then you've got 50 people and no women apart from ops, HR, fine, whatever. And it's a problem because they go, we don't have money to pay for parental leave. But just imagine for a second if everybody got the same parental leave. Suddenly, there's no risk that's different from one to the other. I don't have to make that decision anymore because we offer 6 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it is, to everybody who has a kid. It's a game changer. That's just one example. That and the other one about asking about salary expectations. I'd love you all to go and really sort of dive into that a little bit in your companies. Why are we still doing this stuff? It's so outdated, and it's such a massive barrier. So why don't we change it? I'll just give you one example. Canva changed it. I was working with Canva a few years ago, and is anyone here from Canva? Okay. Oh, you're from Canva. Okay. Okay. So, excellent. So Canva changed it. When I started working with them, they said, no, Cliff is going to block it. He's the COO. He's very commercial. He says we can't do it. I spoke to Cliff. He said we can't do it. And he said, I can't afford to have all my leaders off for these big extended periods. I just can't do it. So I said to him, go and just do the commercial modeling, please. And a few months later, he came out and he said, I did the commercial modeling. And we're going to do it. And they did it. And if you speak to their CTO, Brendan, he will tell you that the results a few years later have been phenomenal. Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it's difficult because the majority of your people will be men in those roles. But it's doable, and the results of engagement, of performance, of loyalty, of productivity, of retention are amazing. So it can be done. It's not that it can't be done. It's not that no one's doing it. It's tired HR processes and policies that really need relooking at. Anyway, I could talk about this all day, so catch me before I leave if you want to talk about it anymore. Sorry.
Not at all. Thank you so much.